One of the weird things about the latest generation of Xbox is that we had a bunch of different stopgaps in between getting to the series generation of this console. And what I mean by that is you had the Xbox One, then from the Xbox One they went into the One S, and then from the One S we ended up going all the way to the One X, which was a significantly more powerful version of the previous generation of the Xbox One itself. So when we got to the Series X, and when it came out initially, I wasn't overly impressed with it, because most of the games I was playing at the time and that were available at the time already looked really, really good on the One X. Now, a couple years has passed, and it's 2023, and at this point, what are my thoughts on this console? And ultimately, there's a lot of really, really good things that this console does, but there's also some stuff that Microsoft could definitely improve on when it comes to this console, and some stuff that I think is just lacking overall. So I'm going to get to that in a moment, just after this.
You lose. Perfect.
To start off, if you look at the Xbox Series X, it's pretty big, and it looks like literally just a big box. And as I said in one of my previous videos, there was a bit of a meme about how the thing almost looked like a mini fridge because it's so big, which truthfully it's not necessarily wrong, especially in comparison to the Series S, which is so much more small and compact, and in my opinion looks way sleeker than the Series X overall. It does the job, but as far as aesthetics goes, it's not necessarily the prettiest looking, I guess. Another thing that actually has kind of bothered me about the Series X, and I believe this issue has not been remedied in later releases of this console, is that there is no actual optical cable or port that you can use with this console. The problem with that is if you go through the settings and try to put this on Dolby Digital, it doesn't actually work as well as you'd expect, and for some reason there's an odd delay. The exact same thing happened to me on my One X and my One S when I owned those, unless I was able to plug it directly into the console, which for this version of the Xbox, unfortunately, you don't have any opportunity to do that. There's probably some sort of workaround. I did at the time when I bought it try to find it, and I personally couldn't. So part of that did bother me a bit, because my soundbar, while it's not the best in the world, it worked pretty well with my previous Xbox consoles, especially with the simulated surround sound, and with this I can't really do that due to the lack of that port being built into the hardware. Now, when it comes to the Series X, especially in comparison to the Series S, and I've already kind of went at lengths in my previous video about this, as far as what you're aiming to do with this console really comes down to the ability for this console to pump out better graphics. So if you're like me and you have a 4K display and you want the best of the best visuals on that display when it comes to a home console, the Xbox Series X is perfect. It runs almost every single new game that I've played in full 4K. There's still some games that use dynamic scalers, but for the most part, most of the main games I play are running in full 4K, which I think looks completely beautiful. I've also found that with this generation, and especially with this hardware, most of the next generation, I'm going to put quotations around that because I feel like it's kind of been a marginal leap from the previous Xbox and PS4 consoles. Most of them all run at a full 60 frames per second. So as far as the performance and the visuals, especially with the 4K resolution, I think overall this console is awesome, and there's so much power behind it that I believe that even in the coming years, especially with some of the games that are yet to be released, we're not even fully tapping into the level of quality of games that this console can actually push out. One of the big things that I talked about in my Series S video was the Game Pass features. For me, Game Pass is a must-have if you're buying the Xbox Series consoles, or even getting Xbox in general at this point. One of the main reasons, first off, though, is, as I understand, all the first-party titles like the Halos, the Gears, those are the main games I like playing anyways, are guaranteed to be coming onto Game Pass. So that's a first big plus, especially if you're getting into this new ecosystem of Xbox. that's a big advantage if you're just going to pay this monthly subscription and get to be able to play some of the best games on Xbox. But overall, the Game Pass itself seems to keep getting better, and there's so many great new games that keep coming out on it. I was actually a little surprised that Atomic Heart made it to Game Pass. They might have announced that previously, I don't know, but the fact that those games are on there, games that I typically would go out and spend $60-$70 on when they came out, is impressive to me. And so for me, the value of paying that monthly subscription and getting Game Pass with it, to me, is a no-brainer. I also like that my previous library is kind of tied from my original account on my older Xboxes to this, and I also like that there's a heavy emphasis on backwards compatibility in this generation. So it's not foolproof. There's still some games lacking as far as 360 games that I like playing are concerned, or especially even with the original Xbox games. But it does seem to be something that is somewhat supported on this generation of Xbox, and the fact that I can play them either by disc or buy them from the game store is something I thought that I wouldn't care for, but I do find myself, especially during the Halloween season, coming back to some old survival horror games that I really liked on the previous generation of the Xbox consoles. The other thing is, if you're like me and you own multiple Xboxes in your home, I really like that you can do family sharing. So by setting one of them to a home Xbox, you can share the gold that you pay for every month, the Game Pass Ultimate that you pay for every month, between both consoles, and not pay double the subscription basically. And it also allows you, when you purchase a game on one of those Xboxes, if it's purchased digitally, you can play it on the other Xbox. So like I was explaining in my Xbox Series S video, I really liked that, especially when it came to this console and it came to a game like Call of Duty coming out. I only had to buy it once, and both my son and I could play it between both Xboxes, which I really liked. Now, in 2023, the one thing that I do want to talk about, and the reason I'm saying the date is, I guess I felt like at this point, I'd be seeing some truly revolutionary looking games on the Series X. Now, this is not to say that the games don't look good, because most of them look really good, but in comparing them to some of the older Xbox One games versus now, it's kind of like I've moved from a PC that was on lower medium settings, and that's all it could pump out on the Xbox One, and then jump into this console and it's basically just playing them at high. Now, I'm aware that even in the PC sphere and the PS5 sphere, it's kind of the same across the board, but I guess I was expecting that we were going to start seeing some really, really strong visual games on this at this point, this year. I know that Hellblade 2's been teased and the trailers were supposed to be in-game, and that looked really cool to me, but I haven't really seen anything like that pop up yet on the Series X. Now, again, that's kind of leading me to my next point. Who really is this console for? If you're using a 4K display, and this is kind of my metric, and you want the best of the best graphics, the Series X is definitely the console you should be going with. Now, there's a massive premium between this versus the Series S, but this is kind of a double-edged sword where I like that. I like that that's an option for the consumer that Microsoft is giving people. Because what it actually allows is, if you know you don't have the proper display, or you're using a cheaper display and have no intentions of upgrading that, the Series S, in my opinion, as I said in my other review, is perfectly fine. Especially when you're only really running out at a maxed out 1080p resolution on most games. Some of the better visuals that you would notice on the Series X don't really need to be as up to par. What I mean is, high resolution textures aren't going to be as noticeable on a Series S because you're only going to be having a 1080p display, which is probably why I can't really tell much of a difference between playing Atomic Heart on the Series S and then playing it on my Series X. But that also comes down to the displays that we're using, right? But the Series S isn't designed for a high-end display. So if you're looking at getting the best of the best in terms of graphics and visuals, the Series X, in my mind, is a no-brainer. I myself, and I know some of you guys are big into Sony, I'm not a console basher or something like that. To each their own, whatever they want to play. But I know that when I look at some of the comparison videos, the Series X still appears to edge out most of the cross-platform games visually. Not by a ton, mind you, but it basically suggests to me that the Series X in the long term is probably going to have even better looking games. So at this point in 2023, if you're basically picking between the Series X and the PS5, I really think that ultimately the two factors you need to consider are, do you want the best of the best quality graphics on multi-platform games? And really, what is your main goal here? So what type of games do you like playing? Because I will admit, PS5 has some fantastic first-party games that unfortunately aren't on the Series X. But the Series X, if you like those Microsoft-style first-party games like I do, and the games you typically play in your day-to-day like I do, the Series X for me is a no-brainer in that way. Now, bringing it down even simpler though, if you want an Xbox but you don't have a higher end display, I would 100% recommend just going to a Series S and sticking with that. I think there's a tremendous amount of value there. But if you're going to be stepping up to a better display and that's important to you, the Series X all day long is a great console at this point in 2023. The only thing I wish is in the future, or in the near future even, is that we can start to see some better first-party support that really shows off the capabilities of what this console can do. Because from the couple of years I've owned it, some games are looking marginally better, but I still don't feel like there's that large graphical leap like we got from, the PS2 to the PS3 or the original Xbox to the Xbox 360. So overall, fantastic console if you like the Microsoft ecosystem, but those are definitely some points that I would keep in mind if you are looking at purchasing this in 2023.